My mother-in-law raised a crystal champagne glass in her Manhattan townhouse and told 28 wealthy guests that I was like a knockoff diamond, shiny from far away, worthless up close. No one burst out laughing. Instead, they smiled into their wine, lowered their eyes to their plates, and let the silence do the cutting. I sat at the far end of the dining table in a plain black dress I had bought on clearance and altered myself in the bathroom mirror. Around me were women with perfect teeth, museum piece necklaces, and last names that opened doors before they even knocked. My husband, Daniel Whitmore, sat beside a private equity couple his mother had been trying to impress all month. He heard her. I know he did, because his fork stopped halfway to his mouth. He still did not look at me. His mother, Evelyn Whitmore, smiled like she had just given a toast to charity. My son has always had a gift, she said, her voice floating above the candles. He can tell what is real and what is costume. In gems, in business, and eventually, in people. A few guests chuckled softly. I felt my face burn so hard I thought the diamonds on the table might melt. I was from Queens. Not the trendy part people brag about now, but the kind where my father ran an auto repair shop behind a laundromat and my mother sold homomatium panadas to nurses coming off night shifts. I learned early that pride did not need a signer label. Daniel met me in a tiny jewelry repair kiosk near 47th Street. He came in with a broken clasp on a vintage chain and left with my phone number written on the back of a receipt. He told me his family business was old, respected, and cold. I'm not like them, he premised. I believed him. After we married, I worked at Whitmore and Company because Daniel said he needed someone he trusted. I answered client emails, organized invoices, cleaned glass cases, scheduled private showings, and stayed late wrapping pieces that cost more than my parents' house. Clients called me Mrs. Whitmore, but Evelyn made sure the name never felt like mine. That blazer looks very outlet, sweetheart. You have a charming accent when you're nervous, very neighborhood. Daniel needed a wife who elevated the brand, not a girl still learning which fork to use. That dinner was when I learned silence can be betrayal. When we got back to our apartment, I stood in the hallway still wearing my coat. Your mother humiliated me in front of everyone, I said. Daniel loosened his tie and sighed like I was asking him to move furniture. She was joking, Maya. She called me fake. She speaks in metaphors. You know how she is. And you laughed. It was awkward. What did you want me to do, start a fight in front of investors? I stared at him. I wanted you to be my husband. His face hardened, not with anger, but inconvenience. You're too sensitive. Maybe if you tried harder to fit in, she won't feel the need to correct you. Something inside me went completely still. Not broken. Clear. That night, while Daniel slept, I packed one suitcase. I took my documents, 3 changes off clothes, my mother's wooden comb, and the sapphire earrings Daniel had given me on our first anniversary. I placed my wedding ring on the kitchen counter with a note. I cannot keep disappearing just to make your family comfortable. At 5:17 a.m., I walked out into a pale New York morning with one suitcase and a heart so heavy I could barely breathe. I went back to my parents' apartment above the garage. My mother opened the door before I knocked. She looked at the suitcase, then at my face, and pulled me into her arms without asking anything. My father came out from the back stairs with oil in his hands and fear in his eyes. Did he hit you? He asked. I shook my head. Not with his hands. I cried in the kitchen while my mother warmed coffee and my father sat across from me, jaw clenched, listening to every word, Evelyn's insults. Daniel's excuses, the dinner, the toast, the laughter that wasn't loud enough to be denied but sharp enough to scar. My mother held my hand. A love that makes you beg to be seen is not love, she said. Daniel arrived with an expensive lawyer and Evelyn sitting behind him in pearls, looking like she was attending a board meeting instead of watching her son erase a marriage. They said I had abandoned the home. They said I had contributed nothing meaningful to the business. They called my work informal assistance. I left with no settlement, no apartment, no furniture, and no last name. But I left with myself. I sold the sapphire earrings. For 3 days, I stared at the cash in my hands like it was blood money. Then I used it to enroll in a professional cosmetology program in Brooklyn. My first real transformation was my mother. She sat in a folding chair behind the garage under a crooked string of lights. I cut it into soft layers, shaped it around her face, and watched her eyes change when she saw herself in the mirror. She covered her mouth. Maya, she whispered. You gave me back to me. I posted the before and after picture online with a small caption. Hair is not vanity when you have forgotten your own reflection. By morning, 19 women had messaged me. Then 43 and a beauty blogger who wrote, this woman doesn't just cut hair. She cuts grief. I opened a tiny salon called Root and Rise in a narrow storefront between a pharmacy and a payday loan place. My rule was simple, before I picked up scissors, I listened. They sat in my chair asking for layers or color correction, but what they really wanted was proof that some version of them was still alive underneath everything they had survived. A lifestyle influencer named Brooke Keller came in one rainy afternoon wearing sunglasses and a smile that looked expensive and exhausted. She asked for something that makes me look less like I've been crying in hotel bathrooms. I did not ask why. 2 hours later, she filmed herself in my mirror, tears running through fresh makeup. She didn't make me pretty, Brooke told her followers. She made me recognizable. By midnight, Miss Alon's account had jumped from 1,200 followers to 86,000. Within 18 months, I had expanded into the Root and Rise Institute, a training program for women rebuilding their lives through beauty work. We offered scholarships to single mothers, domestic abuse survivors, and women over 50 who had been told they were too old to start over. I was not Evelyn Whitmore's poor daughter-in Lawana Moore. I was Maya Reyes, the woman people flew in to see when they needed a new face for a new life. Then the past walked through my front door carrying a cracked leather briefcase. His name was Arthur Bell, and I recognized him immediately. He had been one of Whitmore and Company's senior stone setters, a quiet man with silver hair and careful fingers. He looked thinner now, frightened in a way that made the room feel colder. "Mrs. Reyes," he said, though my name had never sounded more mine. "I need help." I brought him into my office. He opened the briefcase and pulled out invoices, emails, lab reports, insurance forms, and photographs of stones under magnification. "Whitmore and Company is selling lab-created sapphire sand diamonds as natural stones," he said. "Not all of them. Just enough to cover losses. They alter certificates before private sales." My stomach turned. "Evelyn?" Arthur nodded. "She ordered it." Daniel signed off. I felt my pulse in my throat. He slid a printed email toward me. Daniel's name was at the bottom. My hands went cold. "Why bring this tome?" I asked. Arthur swallowed hard. "Because Mrs. Whitmore threatened my granddaughter's medical fund if it talked. She said no one would believe a fired old man. But people believe you now." I looked through the documents. The evidence was clean, organized, devastating. For a second, I heard Evelyn's voice again, "Knockoff diamond. Worthless up close." I made 3 copies of everything and called a consumer fraud attorney whose hair I had once fixed the week before her divorce hearing. Then I called Brooke. "What do you need?" she asked. "Witnesses," I said. "And cameras." The opportunity arrived wrapped in gold foil. A formal invitation came to my office 2 months later. Whitmore and Company was launching its Heritage Blue collection at a rooftop gala overlooking Central Park. The event was sponsored by the Harrington family, Old Money Cosmetics royalty, and hosted by Daniel's new wife, Charlotte Harrington Whitmore. I stared at the invitation until the letters blurred. Charlotte had no idea who I was. She had invited me to celebrate women in legacy industries. Brooke read the card and laughed once. God has a sense of theater. On the night of the gala, I wore a white suit and my mother's wooden comb tucked into my bag like a blessing. My father drove me, pretending he wasn't hurried. Before I got out, he touched Miss Holder. "You don't have to prove your worth, taught him," he said. "I know," I replied. "I'm proving their lies." Daniel saw me first. His face lost color. Evelyn turned a moment later. For the first time since I had known her, her smile slipped before she could catch it. Charlotte hurried toward me in a silver gown, warm and polished. "Maya Reyes," she said, hugging me lightly. "I'm so honored you came. I have to introduce you to my husband. Ilogu pest here at Daniel." "We've met," I said. Charlotte blinked. "You have?" Daniel opened his mouth, but Evelyn appeared beside him, diamonds at her throat and venom behind her eyes. "Maya," she said. "How inspiring. The internet really does make celebrities out of Fanyo now." I smiled. "And money really does make some people confuse polish with truth." Her jaw tightened. Daniel stepped closer. "Maya, not here." I looked around at the cameras, the investors, the glass cases, the collection built in stolen trust. "Actually," I said, "I think here is perfect." The official presentation began 10 minutes later. Daniel walked onto the small stage with Charlotte beside him. Evelyn stood in the front row, smiling again, queen of a kingdom she thought no one could touch. Daniel lifted the microphone. "The Heritage Blue Collection represents everything Whitmore and Company has stood for across 3 generations," he said. "Authenticity. Trust. Legacy." That was when Arthur Bell stepped out from behind the service entrance with my attorney and 2 investigators from the State Attorney General's Consumer Protection Office. Evelyn's face went gray. "What is he doing here?" she hissed. Arthur did not lower his eyes this time. "Telling the truth." My attorney asked for the microphone. Charlotte, confused but sensing something larger than etiquette, nodded before Evelyn could stop her. "We have documentation showing that multiple Whitmore and Company pieces were sold as natural gems while containing lab-created stones," my attorney said. We also have altered certificates, internal emails, and evidence of threats made against a former employee's family. Then the screens behind Daniel changed. Instead of the collection video, they showed invoices, gem reports, side-by-side certificate alterations, email chains, Daniel's approval, Evelyn's instructions. Then came the recording Arthur had made. Evelyn's voice poured through the speakers, cold and unmistakable. If you speak, Arthur, I'll make sure your granddaughter's treatment fund dries up before the next hospital bill. Someone gasped. Charlotte turned slowly toward Daniel. Tell me you didn't know, she said. Daniel stared at the floor. That was his answer. Evelyn lunged toward the stage. This is a smear campaign by a bitter ex-wife. Charlotte looked from Evelyn to Daniel, then to me. Ex-wife? I took the microphone. My hand trembled, but my voice did not. Yes. I was his wife when your mother-in-law called me fake in front of a dinner table full of people. I was his wife when he laughed instead of defending me. I was his wife when this company used my labor, erased my name, and told me I had no value. I turned to Evelyn. You were right about one thing. Some things are fake. But it was never. Charlotte reached up and unclasped the sapphire necklace Daniel had placed around her neck for photographs. She held it out to Arthur. This one, she asked. Arthur examined it for less than 5 seconds. Lab-created center stone, he said quietly. Charlotte dropped it onto the display table like it had burned her. My family invested $12 million in this company, she said to Daniel. Evelyn snapped, Charlotte, don't be dramatic. Charlotte laughed, but there was no humor in it. You sold me a fake marriage with fake stones and called it legacy. Daniel finally spoke. It started after sales dropped, he said. After the divorce, some clients left. Mom's side no one would notice if we substituted stones in private pieces. It was supposed to be temporary. The collapse was immediate. By morning, every major luxury blog had the story. By noon, 3 former clients came forward. By evening, Whitmore & Company's showroom was closed pending investigation. The Harringtons withdrew their investment. Charlotte filed for annulment and fraud claims. Evelyn, who once toasted to my worthlessness, was photographed leaving her townhouse behind a wall of attorneys. Daniel came to Root and Rise 2 weeks later. Maya, he said. I'm sorry. I stood in the doorway of the training floor. Behind me, women practiced sectioning hair on mannequins. One student, a 52-year-old widow named Denise, was laughing for the first time in weeks. Sorry for what? I asked. For letting her humiliate me? For signing the fraud papers? Or for only recognizing my value after strangers started applauding? His eyes filled. I was weak. No, I said. You were comfortable. He flinched. I loved you when I had nothing top row, I continued. You respected me only when the world made it profitable. He reached for my hand. I stepped back. That was the last time I let Daniel Whitmore touch my life. Arthur's granddaughter got her treatment funded after Brooke launched a campaign that raised more in 48 hours than Evelyn had threatened to destroy. Charlotte surprised me by calling 3 months later. I didn't know who you were, she said. I'm sorry if my marriage became another way they erased you. You were lied to too, I told her. We did not become best friends. But she funded 20 scholarships at the Root and Rise Institute and sent every woman in her office to us before their annual conference. Today, my mother runs the front desk on Tuesdays. My father fixes salon chairs, blow dryers, leaky sinks, and anything else that dares to break near him. Brooke still sends clients. Arthur teaches a workshop on spotting fake stones, because I decided beauty students should understand value in every form. And on the main wall of the institute, above the mirrors, I painted one sentence in black letters: fake things need a showcase. Real things take root. But it does not hurt the same now. That night did not destroy me. It transplanted me. They thought I was a knockoff because I did not come from their world. But a diamond is not valuable because of the velvet box it sits in. It is valuable because of the pressure it survived before it ever began to shine.